Hello, I'm Joe. This is Rufus, and this is the Heavy Revival podcast where we'll be talking about up and coming bands, album reviews, and guests, and games, and fun. So, without further ado, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Rufus?
Well, my name's Rufus. I play guitar in the band Forgotten Sentiment. I'm also a vocalist. I'm really big into any kind of heavy music, but I have a particular affinity for grindcore, any kind of old school death metal, brutal death metal. Also kind of into screamo, but not as much. And black metal too. I guess really any kind of metal I'm into. Willing to experiment, you know.
Nice. I'm Joe. I play guitar in the band Bare Knuckle Babies. I'm also a metal vocalist. My main sort of interests are metalcore, deathcore, screamo, and heavy shoegaze are my kind of top genres. So, without further ado,
Yeah.
have you got any interesting bands that you found recently that you think could make it soon?
A band I've been really into recently is the grindcore band Hong Kong Fuck You. They're from Mexico. Really, really good band. They actually have 4 bassists because there's no guitarist in the band. It's all bass. And they have 4 bassists because one of their bassists is not legally allowed in the USA. So whenever they cross the border to do shows in Mexico, they have to get this other guy. So that's kind of interesting.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Spinal Tap, except they're probably allowed in the USA. They
Yeah.
just have 4 bassists for some reason.
Spinal Tap guy died today.
Shit! Well, that's funny timing.
Yeah.
That's probably why it was in my head.
Yeah.
Even though I knew him as the dad from New Girl, not the guy that did Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Anyways, a band that I wanted to mention was More October. They are like a heavy shoegaze band from, I think, well, somewhere in America anyway. They are awesome. They've got a song called Grind Your Teeth.
I'm doing myself. Wouldn't want anyone to speak. Man, my God.
And I think it's just like an amazing. It's got this like heavy riff with harmonics and really like gritty screamo vocals. And yeah, I followed them on Instagram and they followed me back, so I must be doing something right.
Yeah. So the album we're going to be reviewing this week is the album Candela by Svdestada. Svdestada are a blackened crust band from Madrid. So they incorporate elements of black metal, crust punk, other sort of noisy genres. And they also do a lot of like post-black metal, more experimental stuff, I think, is a big part of their sound. The album is at runtime about half an hour, roughly. Obviously, it's not going to be that long because of the crust punk element. And yeah, let's get into it.
So, yeah, I'd say a big part of what made this album great was the sort of cleaner production on it, for sure. I thought, yeah, obviously with black metal and crust punk both usually have like a dirtier, like grittier, like bare bones style production. But I thought that this album, not using that, was a big compliment to their sound. We see often with modern black metal bands that use cleaner production, and I thought that they did that really well. I thought that, yeah, the guitars were mixed amazingly and the drums sounded incredible. The bass was in there, just sitting there, and it was sounding great. And the vocals, especially like the really sort of gritty vocals, they sat on the top of the mix really well. I thought that as a whole, the album was just produced very, very strongly.
I think how clean the album was produced left a lot of room to fill in terms of rawness for the vocals, and I think the vocals do that job very well. They are super raw, super emotional. It's bordering on just straight screamo, like raw screams, but it's got just enough like fry and grit in it to, you know, still be black metal, which I think is really nice. It's a nice sort of area to work in, I think, for a vocalist. It's got a super cool sound, obviously. It's like there's a super high pitch on it, which I think is quite customary in terms of black metal. And just in general, the vocals complement the mix really well. The guitars work very well with each other. The tones are very complementary. They both have a very bright sort of tone, but one of them's a little beefier. and that leaves a lot of room for the bass to fill, and the bass sits in the mix very nicely as well, just on the guitars, and it's the glue, it holds the whole thing together. And obviously, the drums, fantastic.
Yeah, where do we even start with those drums, man? They were just, I mean,
Stellar, truly.
pure blast beats through most of the tracks, apart from track 5, which had that sort of switch into like a average 4/4 drum like rock section, which I thought worked brilliantly. And I've never really heard that in this genre specifically. And I thought that, its uniqueness in that track alone, let alone throughout the whole album, which is purely blast beats, I thought that was a really nice bit of change, and I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, I think the halftime is good because it adds a bit more groove into the album, because you're just sort of, you're looking at these like super fast blast beats, and then you just get launched into this halftime. It's like, whoa.
So they did that really well at the end of track 6, especially.
Yeah.
That halftime section was just, it sort of brought me back in a sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you got any standout tracks that you wanted to mention?
I think track 2 is fantastic. I think it's called Cierto. I don't know. I don't speak Spanish, but
as you can tell.
Yeah. More on that later. Second track was fantastic. I think the opening riff, I think just like the opening half of the album, and the album as a whole, but particularly the opening 2 tracks, you get locked into that sort of black metal, just raw, straight speed. I think you get locked into that very quickly with the first 2 tracks. They definitely set a precedent that this is not going to be like very, there's not going to be a lot of respite. It's going to be like wall to wall, noise. And I think that that's really, really good. I think it's super refreshing, because I think the way they've incorporated, very short crust punk structures is very well executed. Because I think, in terms of black metal, you're looking at very long songs usually. They have super polished, like almost like operatic structures. Whereas here you're dealing with just like 3 minutes of just wall to wall, just heaviness, and I think that's super refreshing.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say the same with track 1, Nudo. I think that's how you pronounce it. I thought that track, especially like being the opening track, coming straight in with blast beats without any form of intro, just blast beats and tremolo guitar riffs. I just thought that as an opener just like took you back, and it's like, whoa, this album's gonna be good. You just can tell with that first 20 seconds of that first track that you're in for a good album. And I think that track as a whole was just fantastic. I thought strong opener for sure. I also like to mention the closing track, which completely contradicts the rest of the album. It's 11 minutes long, which is more common with black metal. So they've definitely taken the inspiration of that into that song. I thought it was a very nice contrast to take away from the just pure heaviness of the first 6 tracks, like 3 minute long, just straight blast beats. I thought that song really sort of added a nice contrast, a bit of dynamic change. I thought it might have dragged on a little bit long. I think maybe cutting it at like 8 or 9 minutes might have been a stronger move. I just thought there was a little section in the middle, I think it was around the 5 to 7 minute mark, that just felt a little bit too dragged out. But I thought that track as a whole, excluding that, was really, really strong way to end the album with like them almost showing their roots and what their main influences were, and sort of paying homage to those bands that come out with these like 15-minute operatic, like just symphonic tracks that just, pure joy every time.
I think you can see a lot of the influence of like more old school, first wave black metal bands. In the terms of like the riffs and the way the guitars were played, I definitely see like a Mayhem influence, and maybe like a Dark Throne sort of thing going on. But yeah, I think it's very that 11-minute track is very, very ambitious, and I think it sort of gets the better of them a little bit for me. I felt that it felt more as though they were trying to write a long song instead of just trying to write a song. And I think, I think that can work in a band's favor sometimes, but here it just feels a little too overbearing.
So, would you give it a rating?
I would out of 10, I would give it an 8.6.
I'd say about an 8.3 for me. Probably the best album I've heard with those two genres mixed together. But obviously, I'm not a huge crust punk fan with that genre as a whole. I really enjoyed this album because I liked the elements they took from it and mixed it with other elements of black metal, which I really enjoyed. But overall, yeah, that was the only sort of main issue from the album specifically was maybe there wasn't enough dynamic change within the tracks. It felt a little bit overpowering at times, and the final track felt a little bit forced to write a long song. Instead of, trying to write a song and letting it go on and see what happens, which probably felt like a more organic way to do it for me.
Yeah. But in general, I totally agree in terms of really enjoying the way they've executed the sound. I'm excited to see where they go next because this is, they're onto a winner here, I think. Definitely. This is a sound that they can take somewhere very interesting. I think they could do something pretty, I don't want to say revolutionary, but, just something very different and something refreshing. Which I think is what you need in the state that the scene is currently in.
Yeah, and I'd love to see if they release something which sort of blows them up a bit because they're at a state where they're getting like 2,000 monthly listeners. I don't think they've played outside of Spain, and I'd love to see them come here. Obviously, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
But yeah, I think that would be a good way for them to go. For me, would probably be to maybe put a little bit more of the black metal influence into it, like in terms of the longer songs. I think if they did that better, it could have worked really well. I think that maybe adding some tracks in that might be around 7 minutes long, with some dynamic change in terms of maybe like a string section, like they have had in the background of these mixes and these tracks, I think could work really well. I'd like to see it where they sort of move away from the radio friendly, like not radio friendly, but 3 minute long, like punchy, straight, fast stuff. I really enjoy it, but I'd like to see them try out some new stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, well, we have been the Heavy Revival, and we'll see you very soon.